Welcome back to another episode of Haunted and Historic Australia's Criminals, Cutthroats and Convicts. In this episode, we take a look at the murder in the Kimberleys. Now, back in the goldfields times of 1880s, in an area we haven't spoken much about, which is Western Australia. In this time, goldfields were popping up all over Australia, and in particular, people were finding gold in the Kimberley region. In this time also, some people made it rich and others were quite unlucky. There was a code in the goldfields for prospectors who were doing very well to sometimes hide some surplus cans of food in the grounds of various campsites, so as that they could maybe come back to it later if they weren't doing too well and find food. The code was out there that if you ventured onto a campsite and the ground looked quite disturbed, there was a good possibility that some canned goods were down into a hole, and if you dug them up, you'd find some food if you needed it. It was great for prospectors helping out other prospectors, and if you kind of frequented an area quite regularly, you'd help yourself out later on if you did it. One man found something other than what he was looking for. He made a gruesome discovery. It wasn't canned goods that he located, but another prospector's body. This is the story of the murder in the Kimberleys, where greed got the better of one man and another man's kindness led to his own demise. There was a man named Franz Erdman, and he was brought up in Germany. He lived in Berlin for some time and began a trade as a saddler. He did spend some time as a miner, and when the gold rush took off, he headed over to Australia, like so many others at this time. It was the 1880s, and he'd gotten in with some other prospectors and a man by the name of Anthony Johansson. Johansson was nicknamed the Swede, even though he was Norwegian, who, very much like Franz, was here in Australia to strike it rich, or at least try his luck. They were in the area of the Kimberleys, which is in the northwest of WA, right up the top there. They met up with various other prospectors in the Derby area, where there had been some gold found. Now, Franz Erdman also went by the name Frank Hornig, and that was who he was known to many of the men, Frank Hornig, or just Hornig. In a very sinister way, Franz Hornig became quite jealous of Anthony Johansson. Johansson was quite a lucky man. He had a knack of finding gold everywhere he went. He was just really lucky. Hornig developed a sinister plan to get Johansson away from the rest of the group. They decided, after quite a bit of pushing from Hornig, to go out even further, away from the others. As they travelled, Johansson's saddle had a couple of bells on it, and as they blew in the wind, they had a nice tune. As Hornig was deciding how he was going to do away with Johansson and take his gold, he was quite happy to hear the tune and probably sung to himself to the melody of the bells. On arrival at an area by the name of Hall's Gully, they decided to stop and found a nice area in which they would make a camp. They would do their gold digging later on, but as the sun was setting, they decided to make camp. Hornig said to Johansson, "Why don't you dig a hole and we'll bury some of these supplies? We've got more than enough at the moment." Probably all that was said in a German accent, by the way, which I'm not even going to attempt at the moment. "Put all our extra supplies into the hole and it won't be so much to carry upon the horses that we have." Johansson thought this was quite a good idea and grabbed the shovel and started digging. Johansson was a pretty agreeable man and was probably flying high as he'd found so much gold, and it was in the little backpacks on the horses. He probably figured he was going to do fairly well, and why not lighten the horse's load? After all, they could buy, when they get back to Derby, all the canned food they could want. So Johansson started on the hole, digging away. Before long, he'd had quite a hole dug. He asked Hornig if the hole was big enough yet. Hornig took a look, sizing up Johansson at the same time, who was quite a stocky man.
Nein, makes the hole a little bigger, Swede.
We need to make sure the animals are not going to dig up this food.
Alright, that's about the best I can do.
So Johansson went on digging some more until it was quite large enough that Hornig was pretty happy with it. Hornig could see that he was almost finished, so he went to his own horse and took out a gun. He hid it behind his back as he got close to Johansson. Johansson was quite happy with himself, looking down at the hole. He bent down to pick up the shovel to get ready to put all the cans in, and unfortunately, this was the moment that Hornig struck. He shot Johansson in the back of the head. Johansson fell into the hole he had just dug, and Hornig wasted no time covering him up. He had been a gardener at some point in his life and knew a little bit about regenerating grass and having that kind of cover the body quite well. So he covered it up with dirt. He made sure to smooth over the area so as that grass could start growing again. He didn't stick around and decided to take off with the gold, but not go back directly to Derby because he didn't want to run into the other prospectors that knew he had taken off with Johansson. He took the majority of Johansson's possessions with him, and this is why he didn't want to run into them either. They would pick out Johansson's stuff straight away. So he made his way directly south, quite happy with himself and pretty certain no one would ever find Johansson's body. And if he did run into anyone he knew, he'd just say that Johansson went on to Queensland because he was so lucky and all, he could afford to. About a month after Hornig had left Johansson's buried body, another man, another prospector by the name of John McAllister, who was a bit of a loner. He liked to prospect on his own and didn't really like the company of others so much, had head up toward the Halls Gully area. He found, by just a chance, the campsite in which Hornig and Johansson had made. He didn't have much supplies on him at the time and had been hoping to find gold and get back to a nearby town. As he's walking around the campsite, he noticed a little patch of area had only just started growing grass, and it was soft when he walked over it. He thought perhaps there were some supplies that had been buried there, some surplus cans of food that he may be able to dig up and have a feed. So he started digging, but not far after he'd gotten about a foot down, he hit something soft. It wasn't a can, and the smell was starting to really bother him. He knew something or someone had been buried under there. After digging around a little more to confirm what he feared, he came across Johansson's body. He didn't know Johansson, the Swede, but he knew it was a dead body, and he got to the nearest police station. This was about 145 miles, or around 230 kilometres back south. Now, he must have been quite a saint, because anyone that had that much of a ride, 3 days or so, ahead of them to notify the police, must have been a pretty good fella. Many, I'm sure, would probably, as soon as they found it was a body, have put it back under the dirt and kept going, not wanting to really deal with whatever they'd found. But not John McAllister. He rode for 3 days and got to the nearest police depot. A Sub-Inspector Troy was in charge of the northwestern gold areas, and he was the man to go to for any problems in this of this type. He believed John, and as well as getting a tracker with him and another trooper, they set back up north to Halls Gully to dig up the body of Johansson and to catch a killer. It was a dirty job, and they didn't like it at all. Johansson's body was strapped to a horse who was brought for that purpose. The Sub-Inspector Troy, as well as John McAllister, headed back to the police station and town, where they were going to deliver the body of Johansson. He directed the trooper, Mallard, and one of the first people, a tracker, to keep on south in search of the killer. Now the trooper Mallard and the tracker were on the tail of Hornig. There were quite a few footprints around the campsite originally that were still visible even after weather had attacked the area. They were still able to track him, and after all it had only been a month that had gone by. Hornig had murdered Johansson on October 31st, Halloween, and John McAllister had found the body on the 2nd of December. It would take them another 8 days to catch up with Hornig. Not long for a man who thought he'd got away with murder. They tracked him south, a couple of camps down, although he tried very hard to keep under the radar. He avoided every camp that he knew he may run into people that had seen them on their way up north. He probably didn't even get a chance to spend any of Johansson's gold before he was captured. He was so paranoid and he kept to himself that he wouldn't have had much of a chance at all. This most likely making it so much easier for the tracker to get to him because there wouldn't have been many other footprints to follow. But as it was, he only got away for a month and a bit before they tracked him down. He was on his own at a campsite in the evening. The trackers sat back with the horses so as not to disturb Hornig, and Mallard the trooper went around the front of him. He called out, "Stand," to Hornig. Hornig protested as he couldn't see who was talking to him. "Who's there? What do you want?" The trooper yelled out, "You're wanted for murder," and he came into view of the firelight. He had a gun in his hand, ready to shoot Hornig if he ran. Hornig gave himself up, but still protested that he never shot Johansson. The trooper explained to Hornig they knew for certain that he had killed Johansson. The tracker had tracked one set of footprints all the way to him. Despite the rain and wind and dirt and heat, they knew they had their man, and Hornig couldn't say anything to sway them. And then he started thinking, well, maybe if I say that Johansson wanted to die, perhaps that will get me off the hook. So he did. He stated clearly that he was helping his mate who wanted to take his own life. The trooper didn't believe this for a second, and they continued on down to Perth jail. They travelled south, and it is known that on many occasions Franz Hornig tried to take his own life. And at one stage, while handcuffed to a tree, he got hold of a sharp wood-like object and started trying to cut his wrists and his arm. Now the trooper Mallard noticed this and saved him from doing this. He was going to get a fair trial, but the evidence was mounting against him. They'd already been through his possessions, or rather, Johansson's possessions, and they found the saddle that belonged to Johansson with those little bells on it that Hornig had actually enjoyed listening to while he was plotting Johansson's murder. But now those bells were almost like a warning that he was getting ever so close to his end. By the time they made their way to Perth jail, he'd stated many times that he was innocent, but I think it was wearing on him. He was locked up in the jail and offered books and meals to eat, which he did. He ate very heartily and did read books, but when offered religious books and possibly a visit of a clergyman, he rejected these. Word had got around in the Perth area that Hornig had murdered Johansson, a prospector murdering a fellow prospector. They were livid and they wanted to see him dead. The court case came around, and unfortunately for Hornig, the evidence mounted against him. He'd had Johansson's possessions. He'd been seen with Johansson going north. There wasn't anything he could do or say to get him out of this. He was going to be hung. Still not wanting a clergyman or religious man to come and visit or give him the last rites as such, He denied religious books and religion of all sorts, not because he wasn't a religious man, but because no one could help him. He would do his own praying if he wanted to. But he said that he was innocent and that the judge forsaken him. So what could a religious man do for him now? He was polite to the prison workers. He never said anything nasty or in any angry manner until the 4th of April, when he would meet his maker. He took what was coming to him very bravely, and on the morning he was hung, he walked out, guided by the guards, to the place he would hang. The last words that he said was, "Goodbye, old chap," to one of the guards who had been with him the past few months. The white cloak was placed upon his head and the noose around his neck. He didn't die a quick death. There was about a minute where his heavy body had slipped through the rope upon the lever being pulled by the hangman and did struggle somewhat before coming to his end. Now, despite his innocent plea, it is assumed very much so that he intended to kill Johansson. He shot him in the back of the head, and what man who was a gold digger finding quite a bit of gold, as witnessed in the company of others, would want to commit suicide? The whole thing was just silly. The jealousy and greed of Hornig was evident, and as a result he hung for it. Franz Erdman, or Frank Hornig, would be the second last man to be hung at Perth Jail, as it closed the very next year. We hope you enjoyed this story. We enjoy reading about and researching into the goldfield areas, and eventually we'd love to go and visit some of these goldfields for ourselves. I'm sure there are many ghosts that are lurking in the Kimberleys, and who knows how many other bodies have been hidden up there. It's definitely somewhere that needs to be investigated, and we'd love to get up there and have a little look around as well. But if you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe and share, and comment if you've ever been to the Kimberleys, or if you know of anything paranormal up that way. That would be quite fascinating as well. Until next time, stay tuned.